Now, we're very pleased to be joined by the Honourable Todd McClay, who is, of course, the Minister of Agriculture, along with Trade and Investment. He also holds the Associate Foreign Affairs portfolio, so quite a bit on the Minister's plate. He's a real champion for the primary industries in Parliament, and he's also leading policy initiatives to support growers and exporters. The Minister will share some opening remarks, and then we'll have some time, hopefully, for questions. So do submit those via the app. All you need to do is click on this morning's agenda, then click on the name of this session, and there's a little button there that says Ask a Question. For now, please welcome the Honourable Todd McClay. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Well, kia ora. Good morning, and to the apple and kiwi fruit growers amongst you, namaste. It's so nice to see you all. Thank you for the invitation to being here. I started very, very early this morning. Last night I was up in Auckland with a group of my colleagues. There was an Indian sports awards evening, the 27th annual one. It was a very, very early start, and when I climbed on the plane, a number of you were sitting around me, happy and friendly and jovial. After this, I've got to rush off and go to Christchurch to deliver a speech to the New Zealand pork industry. And as I was wandering in, I realised I'd picked up the wrong speech. So unless you want to hear a lot about pork, and I mean, it'd be good for them, I think, hearing about fruit and veg. What I'm going to do is I've got some notes. I'm going to talk to you a bit about what's going on, and then if you don't like what I say, I'll publish my speech. Please pretend it's a very good one. Hey, look, it's so good to be here. Can I recognise Kate Scott, the Chief Executive of Hort New Zealand. Kate, thanks for your amazing championship of this phenomenal industry. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to work closely with you. Bernadine from Hort New Zealand Chair and all of the board members. I think we have some international guests, at least some representatives here. The Ambassador of Timor-Leste, our High Commissioner from Samoa. We actually had a minister from Samoa here about 2 weeks ago. I hosted in New Zealand one of the largest trade meetings New Zealand's had for at least 20 years. It's called the FIT Partnership, Future Investment and Trade Partnership. There are now 21 countries, I think, small and medium-sized economies who have come together, not to do a trade negotiation, but to find ways to reduce barriers and make it easier for people to trade. But the point of that was I'd invited a minister from Fiji and Samoa to come and join the meeting with the hope that they might join the grouping overall. And the minister from Samoa did a quick trip around the country and visited many of your regions to meet with some of you who host nationals from Samoa and RSE. He reported back to me he enjoyed it very much, and thank you for your hospitality. I also want to recognise Mike Brown, Chief Executive of New Zealand Vegetable Council, Hugh Ritchie, Chair of Citrus New Zealand, Danielle from the Chief Executive of Apples and New Zealand Apples and Pears. I was down with them in Queenstown last week. Who would have thought that Queenstown would be warmer than Wellington on a day like this? Alistair Young, the Chair of New Zealand Avocado Growers Association, and Andrew Fenton, Chair of New Zealand Fruit Growers Charitable Trust. I recognise all of you because of the significant contribution you make to your parts of the sector, but the sector's contribution to New Zealand. It's a pleasure to open this year's New Zealand Horticulture Conference and to see so many of the industry leaders here. As we come together in this large room in the capital, we have a lot to celebrate together. Horticulture is a story of leadership, of achievement, and of extraordinary men and women of rural New Zealand. And your sector is delivering for New Zealand. It's also a story of amazing growth. In the year to June 2025, horticulture produced almost $8.9 billion worth of exports. That was up almost 25% on the previous year, and that's expected to grow to almost $9.5 billion over the course of the next year. You're also major employers, up to 75,000 people employed during the seasons, so your contribution to rural life it's significant, and for that I wish to thank all of you. Today, I want to talk a bit about the ambition of the national government has for exports, how we are supporting you and what more we want to do around being more productive, how to produce more, and then to mention some of the progress in the Aotearoa Horticulture Action Plan. When we came to government, or at least before government during election year, it's probably about this time 3 years ago, I had to put together our trade policy for the election. And I've done quite a few of these over the years. As some of you will know, I've been a trade minister previously under the John Key and Bill English governments. And sometimes our trade strategies feel something like, hello, we're New Zealand, we'd like to sell you some more butter. The problem with that is actually our exports are so much, very much more than that. So in sitting down and thinking about what we wanted to do, I decided we should judge the success of our trade strategy or policy as much by how much extra we export, not just the number of new free trade deals that we do. And so we set a number of ambitious goals there. I'm a firm believer on setting hard, fast targets to work towards. I know that New Zealanders, you all do that in your businesses, and government should as well. So we said we want to double the value of exports over 10 years, double the value of exports over 10 years. Not because there's anything overly magic about that, other than if you set a target, the system of government will move towards that. And actually what has been so pleasing is so many sectors throughout the New Zealand economy also are saying, this is what we're going to do, this is our plan, this is our proposal to double the value of exports over 10 years. If we can do that, and we're already on track, by the way. In fact, we are slightly ahead of what we need to be doing, even though it's very early days. It means that we get to provide so much more for New Zealanders. You see, companies in New Zealand export generally pay their workers more. They are more profitable, and incidentally, they employ more women. And so as an export economy, it's very important for us. We in the primary sector, you are doing your bit. This year, you will export $62 billion. It is a record. And the situation outlook for the primary industry or sector that we announced at the field days or we released shows that actually over the next year, the sector will hit new records of $64 billion and forecast to hit $70 billion worth of exports by 2030. Of that, horticulture will be around $11 billion. 7 sectors are expected to deliver 85% of this growth: kiwi fruit, apples and pears, and wine. The very important thing about all of this is with much of the work we're doing, the primary sector farmers and growers are feeling much better about what they're doing. When we came to government, Federated Farmers had a survey done that showed that farmer confidence was at an all-time low of minus 66%. We have focused on fixing the basics, on making it easy to farm, make it easier for you to meet your obligations, but at the same time getting the cost down. Think about the most cost-effective, efficient way to achieve what we need to together in real partnership. And I'm very pleased for the sector that the most recent survey done by Federated Farmers shows a significant rebound. Farmer confidence is now at a plus 33%. As farmers and growers, you are right to feel good, you are right to feel proud about your significant contribution to New Zealand. In the trade front, we're opening more doors. We got the EU FTA into force many, many months sooner than I was told we'd be able to. And actually did that by reaching out across the House to all parties and asking them for their support to go fast. After all, as Kiwi businesses were working hard, why shouldn't Parliament roll up its sleeves and we go quickly too? And the main reason was actually if we could get that EU FTA in force quickly, it meant the entire kiwi fruit exports to Europe in the season would be tariff-free. We're able to do that, and it meant on average an extra $18,000 on the pocket of every kiwi fruit grower in New Zealand because that tariff rate had gone to zero. Over the last 2 years of the EU FTA, New Zealand has exported an extra $3 billion to the European Union, predominantly from the primary sector. Our FTA with the UK in the first 3 years, we've seen exports go up by about 79%. We did a free trade agreement with the UAE. Did that in the first year that we're in government as trade minister. The fastest ever agreement we've negotiated in just over 3 months. It was the highest quality, 89.7% of all of our exports tariff-free on day one, going up to 99% over 3 years. And our first 6 months of that agreement, we saw our exports increase by 34%. That's come off as a result of the uncertainty of the war in the Middle East, but there's still significant opportunity there. We also got a deal with the GCC done, including Saudi Arabia, an ambition for decades for New Zealand. That one took 6 months, and over 7 years, when it's fully enforced, again, we're 99%. Incidentally, although we're facing tariff rates into the US and changing tariff rates and uncertainty, our exports to the US have gone up by 4% by value during that period of time. And then, of course, India, which is a real success for New Zealand. It will be extremely important to our economy in the years to come. I suggest to you that over a decade it will be just as important to us as the China Free Trade Agreement is. Our exports to a country of 1.4 billion people to a trade is only a few $billion, but that will grow very, very quickly. On day one of entry into force, about 57% of our exports are tariff-free, going up to over 80% when fully enforced. 95% of everything we export to India was either tariff-free or has significant tariff elimination. Some of the things that on day one, 0 tariff rates for wool, sheep meat, seafood over time, infant formula, wood products. Kiwi fruit, we're the only country in the world to get a tariff-free quota of kiwi fruit, about 45,000 tonnes, greater than we've ever sold them in a year, and outside of that, a halving of the tariff rate, so we're the same as others. We're the first country in the world to get a quota and reduced tariffs for apple exports to India. Actually, sorry, it's the apples that are 45,000 tonnes, not kiwi fruit, but that is significant. We're the only country in the world to get a reduction of a tariff rate for honey, Manuka honey, from 66% down to about 16% with a quota, so we are going to do very, very well out of that, just significant opportunity. A few weeks ago with our Prime Minister, Chris Luxon, I announced the National Party's trade policy going to this election, and it's called New Zealand's Next 1 Billion Customers. It looks at how we can help people trade, more trade missions, how we can get costs down and barriers down, get you better access to market, how we can promote more, how we can build on the great reputation you have as the producers of the highest quality, safest food in the world. We've identified a number of parts of the world we think we also need free trade agreements, from Brazil and others in South America to some of the countries around India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh as an example. Some of the African countries, because although we may not trade with them as much right now, in the coming years, over the next decade, they will start importing much more. And if we're not there on the ground doing deals soon, then we'll miss out to the European Union or to China or the US, who will actually get that first mover advantage. And then some of the non-EU countries, very wealthy consumer countries around the European Union. With the EU Free Trade Agreement, we're already there. Our business is doing well. It's a small hop over a border. And you might have seen just a short while ago, we announced that we are starting discussions with Switzerland about the opportunity for a free trade agreement. So we now are in a situation where New Zealand has greater demand and market access than we can produce for that high quality food that you produce. So we face a challenge or an opportunity. Over the last 3 years, we have unpicked rules and regulations that haven't been working well. You'll see that we are replacing the Resource Management Act with something that makes it easier to comply, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment a little bit more. But how do we produce more to meet the expectation of those consumers around the world who are willing to choose what you produce, and they are willing to pay more for it? And so we announced a policy at the field days called land use flexibility. And the concept is very straightforward, very simple. If you can show the same environment and climate footprint, the same or improved environment or climate footprint, you should be able to make choices for yourself as to what you do on your land that could drive greater value. Except planting pine trees, I've banned that on our most productive land. But we can do that by leaning heavily on science and innovation. New Zealand farmers and growers have always innovated. When I go overseas as the Agriculture Minister, I have a very easy job. Everybody knows about how good New Zealand farmers and growers are. They want to see what we're doing. They want to emulate them. They want to be like you. When I go overseas as a trade minister, you give me the hardest job in the world because you are so good at what you do, other governments protect against us. So how can we use science and innovation to reduce our environmental footprint, and to produce more. So the economy becomes better, you create more jobs. We've announced a number of programs at the field days to help with this, $136 million across the sectors. The proof of concept to show how this can be done in one area of kiwi fruit, which is the start. We're looking how we can increase production whilst lowering that footprint to drive up returns at the farm gate, but at the same time to ensure that the high quality, safe food we produce is available. We don't have a choice because people are choosing New Zealand's products at the moment, but they don't have to. They can choose from Ireland or the UK or Australia or many other countries. So that story of providence, consumers like that our cows eat grass or the sheep are on the hillside or that the fruit is the best tasting in the world. We must continue to look after that reputation, but that doesn't mean we have to close down farms that have rules that make it more costly for you. We can create a true partnership and do this together, producing more from what we already have or producing more using less, things that farmers and growers in New Zealand have always done. Just on the Resource Management Act, it's a very important part of making some of those changes. Replacing that will happen before the election. The planning bill and natural environment bills to replace it have just been reported back from the Select Committee. For the first time, our planning system will list food and fibre production as a key goal to support the primary sector growth and reduce regulatory hurdles. That's very important because as well as environment and other things, it now recognises as a goal the production of food. Around 45% of consents and permit applications currently acquired under the RMA will go under the new system. That's somewhere between 15,000 and 22,000 consents that would simply no longer be needed. So this is a generational change to our economy and to the way we designate land, we plan or we build. It means clearer national direction, more consistent rules from one council to the next, fewer consents, and more certainty for anyone and everybody who want to invest, develop and expand. Just by way of an example, the new system is projected to add $3.1 billion to GDP every year, on top of more than $13 billion in savings over the next 30 years. So that's money that stays on farms instead of going out the gate on consultants and consent fees. The final thing I'd just like to touch on is the Aotearoa Horticulture Action Plan and give a short progress report. It was launched at your conference last year. It is an excellent plan. Your industry has done a great job and put a lot of thought and effort into it, and I'm very pleased to see in many areas with government we're cooperating well and it is working. And although I have nothing but respect for officials that work with us, they are men and women who care deeply. They choose to work for government to actually make New Zealand better. If there are areas you think we need more focus and not working as well as they should, you need only raise them with me, because our job is to work together and with you, not for either of us to be working against each other. The plan aims to increase grower returns by doubling orchard or farm gate value by 2035. That's very important. And it implemented a roadmap, identified 52 priority areas. So I'm very pleased to announce, or at least you are releasing today, the first progress report. And key progress includes the New Zealand-India Free Trade Agreement, as mentioned earlier, which delivers those benefits of kiwi fruit, apples, avocados, cherries, persimmons and blueberries. The government's plan to deliver standards for commercial vegetable growing in our resource management system, and establishing the Sector Leaders Forum of regulatory agencies and industry that facilitates discussions on the approval of vital chemicals needed for sectors' ongoing success. We should find a way to explain that better so it sounds better to you. But believe me, that's a very important part of what we're doing, because it actually means the innovation that you need from overseas or in New Zealand, you get to use it very much more quickly. Congratulations on the progress you have made in this first year. And I want to acknowledge the partnership between iwi, industry, research providers, government for the progress we are making with implementing the action plan. Finally, just to finish by, again, thanking you for your contribution. As cold as it is outside today, There are people all over New Zealand that got up early to go to work on a farm or to work on their orchards. You are the most important part of our economy. Don't believe what they tell you when you go to towns and cities. 80% of everything we will export this year on our ships and on the aeroplanes comes from the primary sector. 360,000 people in New Zealand get their livelihoods because of the risks you take and the hard work that you do. And for anybody that thinks that agriculture and the primary sectors is a sunset industry, they need to get up early and see the sun rise, because you have so much more to offer. Everywhere I go, I see products that you produce on the shelves, and they often are taken more quickly than some of the ones from other nations. Please keep doing what you're doing. Keep innovating, keep caring about the environment, keep meeting your obligations, and together we'll open up market access so that what we've just done in India happens everywhere. You have choices as to where you want to put your products, and consumers all over the world will have the choice to choose the highest quality, safest food produced anywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for being here. Do come and join me. We have lots of great questions coming in for you via our app, and a lot of these questions are super specific, and we have 6 minutes remaining before morning tea. So hopefully we'll be able to get to some of these with you tomorrow during our political session. But you mentioned the Aotearoa Horticulture Action Plan, which has this aspiration of doubling the farm gate value of horticulture by 2035. From your perspective, Minister, what's the number one thing that would get in the way of us achieving that goal?
Well, I'll talk about this more on the platform tomorrow with some of my colleagues from other parties. Number one, it would be a tax regime that is regressive and makes you stop thinking about how you innovate and produce high-quality food and have to talk to your accountant, sit in the office and do much more paperwork. Ultimately, though, you're heading in the right direction. Ultimately, my view is government should be there to help and enable. Over the last 3 years, we've made a lot of changes to rules and regulations in the primary sector across the board. I'm trying to bring trust back into a system. You know what works best on your orchards or on your farm. It's not for me to sit with officials in Wellington and sort of make decisions from officers that can't see the land. And so ultimately, if we've got that right, now it's the government's job to get out of the way a little bit, open up some of the access around the world, and then back you to get to those markets and earn more.
Do you believe that New Zealanders from different walks of life have a good understanding of the value that this sector generates?
I think that's certainly improving, yes. I think 3 or 4 years ago I might have had a slightly different view. I viewed my job as a Minister of Agriculture as to talk up the successes and the importance of the sector, and where there's a problem, not to castigate or blame, to go and fix it. I mean, an example of this, I remember on the Prime Ministers Committee when I was there as a minister, somebody held up a photograph of something that wasn't working well on a farm, and I said, well, look, you're right, that shouldn't happen. But what you're trying to do is say is every farmer in New Zealand does that, whereas actually that is an exception, and if it's wrong, the law will deal with it. Talk up the successes, talk up the amazing things you do, talk up your contribution to regions and jobs and the fabric of rural communities. Where there's a problem, don't blame, get on and fix it, and then move on to the next thing. So I think there is a growing acceptance from New Zealanders about the importance of the primary sector, its significant contribution, and that's particularly because horticulture and agriculture are helping lift the New Zealand economy out of the very, very big hole that we found, and you're helping us repay the debt.
One of the topics we'll be covering at this conference is the growing consumer expectations, data, information around provenance, people really drilling down into the information behind the things that they are buying. How well are we telling our own story overseas?
We tell it very, very well. Everywhere I go, people choose what we produce, and it's because of a feeling. If you go to China, where there are more than 500 million people who are younger, who have disposable income, they now sort of live in apartments in cities that don't have kitchens in them. They want ready to eat, ready to heat, ready to cook. So they like what New Zealand produces. They like the idea that, our cows are out in the grass or the sheep in the hills. They know about that. Our job is to keep telling that story and to back it up. So when I talk about land use flexibility, producing more, it is not a choice between producing more and the environment. We have to do both, because consumers choose what we produce at the moment, but they don't have to. They have many, many more choices, and in many markets around the world, many economies, we are seeing products like ours from all over. And so ultimately, though, in choosing to meet an environmental obligation, it doesn't have to cost you, it doesn't have to be bureaucratic, and it doesn't have to put you out of business. We're taking the approach of working together with the sector, and we're starting to see very good outcomes as a result.
There are a number of questions coming from the floor around cost to produce, and we know that the pressures are significant on many of our growers. We know that margins are being squeezed. Is that something that concerns you? It
is something that we're very mindful of. Whenever the government makes a decision, whenever I have input into a decision, one of the questions is this going to add cost? Is it absolutely necessary? Is there a more cost-effective, efficient way to achieve what we need to? There'll be many cases with my officials, I've said to them, yes, but that's a cost that's unreasonable. Find another way that's less expensive or easier to do it. So governments have to continue to do that, to challenge. And in the good times, even more than in the tough times. Just because people are making money is not a good reason to make a decision that costs an unnecessary amount to achieve something. Governments are not businesses, but we should think more like you do, the most cost-effective, efficient way to achieve what we need to, and then actually don't think that we have all the ideas by ourselves. The action plan is a great example of that. You know, many of the things in the action plan we were looking at and considering. Some of them we're not. We're now doing it together, but yes, we are very mindful of it. Energy is a really important part of that. You've seen us made many decisions and announcements to try and bring more energy into New Zealand, more investment from overseas. We just don't produce enough energy, which is why the costs are too high, and in many cases, if those costs are too high, you can't always pass them on to consumers overseas. It comes from your bottom line. So yes, we're very mindful.
You've warned of an increasingly complex global trading environment and tough conditions for our exporters in the years going forward. What is the number one thing that businesses can do to prepare for this unstable environment?
My apologies, but don't believe everything you hear in the media would be the answer to that. There's an example of many years ago when the European Union had a very tough economy, and I wandered down in Rotorua to a carpet shop, somebody that imports rugs and so on, and I asked him how it was going, and he said, it's really good, you know, sales are up, I'm feeling quite good. He said, I was thinking of hiring someone else. He said, but I see in Europe, and particularly in Greece, there's a problem with the economy. I'm not sure that I should at the moment. And I said to him, well, that's interesting. Do you sell much to the European Union? He said, no. I said, do you have any customers from the European Union? He said, no. I said, have you been to Europe? He said, no. I said, mate, I reckon you'll be okay. He didn't employ that extra person for another 6 months because he was worried about what he saw and what it could do to the world economy and his economy. And he's probably right, except for that person that wanted that job over that 6 months, they had to wait. So in adverse times and challenging times, yeah, it can be tough, but there are always opportunities. And if you think about what we've done over the last 3 years with the great trade and geopolitical uncertainty, we've done 3 trade deals that people said we couldn't. India, 1.5 billion people, you know, I do have a huge amount of respect for them, but I don't know that New Zealand First can do maths, because 5 million people in New Zealand, you know, divided by 1.4 billion people, we do really well out of that deal. We are small, and by comparison, most other countries of the world would love a free trade agreement with India. So as challenging as it is, get out on the world stage. You guys produce the best fruit that you can, and we'll make sure you have market access, you can sell it, and let everyone else from Australia to worry about how hard it is. Let's just get on and do well.
That's a great note to end on. Minister, we'll have you back at our political panel this morning. Good to see you today. Round of applause for the Minister. Thank you, mate. Cheers.